Well, hey everyone, this is Heidi St. John. Welcome to the Heidi St. John podcast. Today, I have my friend and your friend, Dr. Mark Sherwood, back on the show, and we're going to be answering listener questions. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, thank you guys for tuning in today. There is so much happening right now, so much noise in the world right now. And one thing that encourages me, and I know Dr. Mark feels the same way, is to see so many great questions coming in here to the show. So we're going to just, we got so many that I don't even think we're going to make it all the way through. But I want to welcome my friend, the hope dealer, Dr. Mark Sherwood, back to the podcast. Hey, my friend, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's good to be here because in times like this, the greatest distractions in life from making great decisions are, get this, death, disease, sickness, and lack. And we have an opportunity to answer some wonderful questions today, so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Yep, I am too. Let's start with Becca in Michigan. She wants to know, what are the best supplements for an 11-year-old who has anxiety and feelings of low self-worth? I don't know if you can give somebody a supplement for feelings of low self-worth. I don't know about that.
Well, Becca, you have a very, I would say it's almost kind of a common situation. So there's two neurotransmitters I want you to keep in mind, Becca. One is going to be serotonin. One is going to be dopamine. Serotonin kind of keeps us content. And guess what gives us value? Dopamine. There you go. So what are we going to do for your young person to give them the ability to create dopamine? You're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to give you some supplements, and I'm going to give you an action step, right? Supplements are going to be your B vitamins. So I want you to get your little one on some methylated B vitamins. Okay, just a methylated B vitamin complex. If the little one can swallow a capsule, it would be, my pick would be something like a B Supreme. You also want to get them on vitamin D as well. For that age, between 3 and 5,000 international units. Because a person that's low or suboptimal in D, Becca, is going to be depressed. And number 3, good old-fashioned omega-3 fatty acids. I want to see that little one of yours, Becca, take about a tablespoonful of mango peach smoothie omega-3. It's going to taste great. Little one is going to love that. It's going to be amazing. Action step. Go get some outdoor activity with your child to find out what makes them joy. Go climb a mountain. I don't know where if you live near one, go to the beach, go to the pool. A little cooler this time of year, go out for a walk. Just get outside and get some air. That activity can metabolize adrenaline, which sort of slows down the cortisol output, which can give a little bit of value to a person.
Man, that's good. Also, I'm not a doctor. I just play one on my podcast. But I would just like to say, make sure that your son is not getting his dopamine hit from an iPad.
Yeah.
I am hearing more and more and more moms who are struggling with kids who are frankly addicted to screens, and we're hurting our kids. And I'm going to be talking more about this, I think, in the months to come. We're looking very seriously here. I mean, Mark, you'll probably like this, but we're looking really seriously here at the Homeschool Resource Center of making this a screen-free zone so that when kids come to the center, they can't bring their phones, they can't bring their iPads. It's amazing what we're doing to our kids when they, with the super sharp rise in ADHD and all these other things. And I think a lot of this stuff can be traced back to these devices. What do you think?
I would agree. I was out in California the last time we talked, and I was at a school. And one of the things I observed at the school, they were trying to sort of work on the nutrition for this ADD, ADHD concepts like we've talked about. But when I was out walking around just observing young people, I observed them being on their phone, and they were literally almost bumping into each other. There was no conversation. It was weird to me. And I think that what you're doing right there is brilliant and ingenious, because there is such a thing as a dopamine hit we get from checking those devices. Instead of getting dopamine hits from doing activity, we're getting dopamine hits from whatever is being fed through that device, and it can be very dangerous and destructive, as you know.
Yeah, it's true. And I think we're going to see more, the science behind this now is starting to come out, and it is not, it doesn't bode well for parents who, your kid's on as soon as you take them to the grocery store, they get in the car. We can't drive 20 minutes without having our kids on an iPad. I don't know about that, Mark. I think it might be hurting us. All right, Ken in Michigan Hey Ken, how you doing? He says he wants to piggyback on a listener that commented on getting eczema, and the discussion led to limiting gluten. He says,
Yeah.
I would highly encourage Dr. Mark and the listener to check out Sue Becker, who teaches on milling your own grains for bread and other baked goods. It changed my life. It cleared up my eczema, it's healing my gut issues, and it keeps me feeling satisfied and away from sugar cravings. People with previous gluten sensitivities are able to enjoy bread by doing this. I started milling my own bread last year, and it is yummy. It's yummy.
Yeah, Ken, I think it's outstanding. I know who Sue Becker is, and she's big on the natural, sort of ancient kind of grains concept, and it's really amazing. Now, you hear us talk a lot about the demonization of bread. It's not bread itself. It's what's been happened to it during the production and even genetic modification purposes that are based here in America, quite frankly. And so
Right.
when you talk about a lot of gut issues that lead to autoimmunity, including things like an eczema that you just mentioned, Ken, there is no question that the modern day production of grain/gluten products have contributed heavily to that, among other things, processed foods. So when you bring in natural foods, like you're doing, whether it be natural breads, natural grains, natural goodness from fruits and vegetables, you are going to find healing in that. So I highly commend you for that. Well done, Ken. Way to be an example, man.
Yep, I love that. Danielle in California says her mom was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she wants to know if there's any recommendations for resources that you could offer.
Yeah, Danielle, that's a wicked disease process. I'm going to give you resources of a book, and then I also want to tell you three components of Alzheimer's that's in the book. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a Reader's Digest version, sort of the book. The book is called The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Dale Bredesen, Bredeson. Great book. It's one of my favorites of all time. He has been on the forefront of this Alzheimer's research for many, many years, the last couple of decades. There are three components to Alzheimer's that we need to understand. Number one is going to be type 3 diabetes. Sounds familiar? That's because it's type 2 diabetes. They stopped naming Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because, for the same reason, they stopped naming type 2 diabetes sugar diabetes. That's the cause. So you got to help your mom avoid that stuff at all costs. That will slow down that process. It's called insulin resistance of the brain. The number two component is really a heavy metal or toxicity. Heidi and I were talking before the show of where toxins get stored. Most of them get stored in the fat tissue, and guess what? The brain is a fatty organ, so you get this typical buildup of heavy metals and or mold. So make sure you do a nice detox. And number three, women are 8 times more likely to get Alzheimer's dementia than men because they lose testosterone production. So there's a bunch of testosterone receptors that are on the brain, and when ladies lose that, the odds of brain inflammation go up. So that book will give you all those resources and more.
Man, that is good. But Alzheimer's, it's such a terrible disease. And I love the encouragement that it doesn't have to be a death sentence. So I love that. Rachel wants to know, and you and I have talked about this before because I think it's interesting. She wants to know if you think grounding mats and grounding sheets really work. They claim decreased inflammation, increased energy, improved sleep.
Well, Rachel, there's a lot of science behind that. Here's kind of the basis behind that in a very short layman's term descriptor. So the body has a tendency to build up these things called free radicals. And so free radicals are really the waste products of general energy creation. So when you breathe, when you talk, when you're on a podcast with Heidi, listening to that, you're
Just
going
creating
to have
all kinds of free radicals.
making all kinds of free radicals, but it's part of life. And the body has these genetic enzymes that are made from our genes, of course, that break them down, but we all break them down differently. The tendency is, as we age, to have more free radical buildup at the cell level, and that creates inflammation. Free radicals roam around because they're missing an electron in their little chemical structures, and so they try to steal from other guys. They try to steal from other cells, and they create havoc if they don't get dealt with. So when you talk about grounding, you're making that electron miss go away, and you're short-circuiting that thing, and that actually can help. The greatest grounding that I know is to go stand on a beach somewhere. Wow, that's outstanding because the earth is a negative pull. And so you stand on that. Typically, that makes you feel better. And I don't believe that's just a coincidence.
Nope. It turns out God made creation for more than just our enjoyment. I was driving through the Columbia River Gorge with my husband 2 weekends ago. I spoke in Spokane for an event there, and we decided to take a little bit of a drive and visit some wineries on the Columbia River. And I noted to him that just the creation around us. You never look at a scene, whether it's the Columbia River or the mountains or the ocean, where the colors clash. It's like God is the ultimate painter, and all of the colors, like, because we were watching the sun go down and hit the side of the gorge of this brilliant glowing, and just it was spectacular, and that up against this bright blue sky and these beautiful white clouds. And I told Jay, I'm like, look what God does. Like, nothing that he has made is anything less than spectacular. And so it would stand to reason that when we go to the beach, it does more than just give us something visual to look at, that God's in the business of multitasking. So I love that. Jenny, in your home state of Oklahoma, says she is 45 and her doctor wants her to get a colonoscopy because of her age. She goes, I don't have any problems and I think it's unnecessary. What do you think about colonoscopies?
Well, Jenny, I get asked that question probably once or twice a week right here on these premises in the Functional Medical Institute right here in Oklahoma. And it's a question that I answer like this every time. If you're not having any problems, why are you looking for problems? That's a simple little reasonable way to look at it. I don't have any idea, Jenny, what age has to do with anything. All I know is that age is based upon a calendar and time. But that is not how God ages Jenny, Heidi, or Mark. God ages us through a biological aging process that has nothing to do with time. And so there is a biological aging speed, and there's a chronological age. And you know, and I know, that we don't age the same. So just because the calendar says something, to me, is kind of irrelevant. I would turn that off like noise. And if you were to have some bleeding or something like that, or a history of polyps, go get it looked at. Our advice, friendly advice, is don't worry about it. Now, people can differ, and that's okay, but that's the way my wife and I view that.
Yeah, I'm hearing more and more people say that it's almost like feeling the same way about mammograms and things like that. That the people, the National Institutes for Health and things like that, which have been largely, now people don't trust them anymore, which is, I'm sure, why Jenny's writing in, because she's like, wait a second, everything we've heard our whole lives, we're starting to sort of rethink it. I had an anonymous listener from Washington State write in to say that she is a 60-year-old mother of 8. Wow. She says, I'm a medium build, and my biggest places of embarrassment are my hanging jowls and a double chin and the overhanging belly. I've had 2 C-sections that have created a shelf. What's the best way to address these 2 areas to help build my confidence? I have a daughter getting married soon, and I would like to gain some confidence back.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations on being a mom of 8. You are a hero, sister. So well done. My hat's off to you. All right. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to let go of the shame. Let go of the I feel gross stuff, because I can feel that coming through even the anonymous email.
Yep, me too.
Here's the thing. Just relax. Okay, I want you to go on an anti-inflammatory food plan. Super simple. If God didn't make it, it's not packaged in the way he did it, don't eat it. Now, try to stay above ground, non-root vegetables, and then try to eat some good, clean proteins. If you do that, as a general rule, you're going to lose excess fat tissue. That's going to happen, no question about it. And you're going to feel better as your clothes fit better, and then follow it the rest of your life. Don't use just an event to get there, but really stay with it and let it be a permanent lifestyle change so you don't have to feel this way ever again. Secondly, if you want to tighten some skin up, I recommend the Kingdom Skin cream that we put together. It works really good. I like it. It's got a skin tightener in it and a collagen rebuilder. It's called Kingdom Skin, BPC 157 peptide, and also GHK copper peptide. We put both of those in there, and that works outstanding. But do both of those things, and start walking every day. The more you move, the more you live. The less you move, the closer you are to rigor mortis. So just move more, sit less, and enjoy your life, and get ready for those wonderful weddings coming up.
Yeah, and Mark and I, we've talked about this before, but reality is the world's pretty hard on women. I
Oh,
think harder on women than it is, not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but physically at least, harder on women than it is on men. And I think a lot of this, the insecurities that we feel, especially as we get older, it really is difficult, and to be able to just, and you want to feel good. But I love your encouragement that she gets out and walks, because I'll tell you what, when I'm feeling, when I'm exercising and I know, hey, I'm drinking lots of water, I've got my little hydrogen bottle, I'm
hmm
doing all the things, I'm taking care of myself. And see, there it is. And that is exactly what you need to be doing to fuel your body and to
hmm
feel good as you get older. And so, boy, I have so much respect. I so appreciate this listener for writing in, because I know
Courage. That's good.
she is not alone. She's not alone.
Mhm.
Amy in Michigan. No, Minnesota. I take that back. Amy in Minnesota says, I have some chronic health issues that have affected my lady parts. She said, it affects our marriage in many ways, but specifically our sex life. My husband is amazing about it, but it's been a few years now, and I'm not sure how to encourage him and to strengthen him with that piece missing. I know there are things you can do, but when you can't have intercourse, it's a very deep grief.
Yeah, Amy, this is a big deal. And first of all, you got a wonderful husband there. So I'm glad you guys have had the conversation, and that's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's what two people do. We know that intercourse and that closeness, that intimacy is very important for a healthy marriage. But I'm going to go one step further with that before I get into your question. Communication is the
Yes.
healthiest step of marriage that you can have, and allow God to be the center of that communication. If you do that, everything tends to work out. Now, I don't know, you didn't go into specifics about what those issues were with the lady parts, but I will tell you the most severe one that I've ever seen is called lichen sclerosis, where the vaginal opening will begin to close off, where it sort of can prevent the intercourse possibility. I don't know if that's your situation, but my gut instinct tells me that may be it. Now, if that's the case, I want you to look into something called the O shot. O as in orgasm, O shot. Basically, there's a way to go in there and use some platelet-rich plasma to inject, and we've seen that improve over the course of time. The quicker you get to it, the better. But obviously, you want to go see a gynecologist at least to see what possibilities exist for you, and always hold out hope. Never let go of hope, man. I mean, God is a healer. Come on. And He uses sometimes people to do it. So look at all avenues. Keep your faith meter up there high.
Yep, I agree. And also, I would just say I've done a fair amount of counseling for married women over the last 20 years or so. And so this isn't the first time I've heard this either. And, you heard the old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Yes.
And so I think this sounds like you guys need to be creative. And this is true for women in pregnancy, right? There are a lot of women who get near, especially to the ends of their pregnancy, and they're not able to engage in intercourse anymore. And so they get really creative. And it sounds to me like maybe this is an opportunity for you to get really creative. And I agree with Mark, keep those lines of communication open, because for sure, the sexual aspect of a marriage is very, very important. So don't put it on a shelf. That's what you for sure don't want to do. Don't put it on a shelf. Keep talking. And don't give up. I love Dr. Mark's suggestion as well, because we don't know. I mean, you didn't say exactly what's going on. So that's why I would just say, boy, start to get creative. And there are lots of books written about this. So, keep us posted. And I love that she wrote in,
Yeah.
Mark, because it tells me she really cares about her husband. Sounds like she's married to a really neat guy.
Yeah, I love that. Anytime you have the courage, ma'am, to ask the questions on this, because that is boldness, and I so
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's amazing. You're a hero.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Anonymous in Idaho says, Dr. Mark, I have been struggling with brain fog and fatigue, anxiety, and other health concerns for a while. I recently took what did she say? A mycotoxin
Mhm.
test, and it shows higher than normal levels. We found some minimal mold damage in our home by a professional. We're addressing those concerns, but my doctor wants me to start some supplements to open drainage and then slowly add binders and antifungals to lower the mold toxicity in my body. I'm nervous to start the process and most days feel overwhelmed at the thought of it. I'd love to have your take on this. What advice do you have for me moving forward? I also have candida in my mouth, which is my worst symptom right now.
All right, so a couple things, Anonymous in Idaho, that you want to keep in mind. First of all, don't be nervous about allowing your body to do what it does, which is to relieve itself of things such as toxins. The body's great at that. That's why we have, guess what, a system God gave us called the detox system. Pretty fascinating that God thought about that. Okay, so there's mold, there's mycotoxins. Obviously, some forms of mold and mycotoxins can be a little more difficult to get out. They do plant themselves, as I stated earlier, inside of fat tissue, right? So fat tissue tends to hold toxins, and the brain's a real central reservoir of those things as well. Generally speaking, it sounds like your doctor is going to give you some baseline nutrients to get your systems working well. I would consider doing maybe a 2-week detox. We do those all the time. They're not hard. You just want to change the diet, get nutritions in there so your body will begin to work. Binders are typically required. Some binders like bentonite clay or charcoal that the doctor would give you. We like to do it about 3 weeks in from starting a process. It is not anything to be nervous about. Ask questions. If you don't get answers, ask more questions, right? Mm-hmm. If you have candida in your mouth, that's also going to be driven by sugars. So you got to sort of slow down the sugar aspect of that. When you do that, you're also going to help your body's ability to get rid of the toxins. But if you don't do that, the body's ability to get rid of the toxins, whether given binders or not, is slowed down quite a bit. So those two things are actually connected quite a bit.
Wow. Well, sugar, man, I'm telling you what, for all of my growing up years, we got the food pyramid and all that, and the grains were at the bottom, and it's just like this backward thing. And sugar is in everything. It is in everything. It seems like we have to be really, really careful. And I so appreciate that. Jessica in Kansas, she's got a 2-part question for you, Dr. Mark. She says she loves your knowledge and the wisdom that you share. She's got 2 teenage kids, one of which is a very picky eater. And while I do my best to get whole, healthy foods in her, it's a struggle. I'm concerned because she's growing and developing into a woman. So my first question would be, what are the most important vitamins for her? And secondly, my teenage son, who's a good eater, is starting to, because he's a boy, is starting to experience some bad acne without wanting to start putting harmful chemicals on his face. What would you recommend? Side note to all the mamas out there with little kids, if you think getting your toddler to eat healthy is hard, just wait till they become teenagers.
Yeah, you're right. Is it Jessica, I believe, right? So look, Jessica, here's the deal, man. It's better, all moms out there, to start working on nutrition immediately the minute the kid eats. That's like smart, and that way you won't have to make adjustments and changes. Taste is not something that is acquired by genetics. It's something that's trained. So just keep that in mind and think through that, right? Here's what I would do with your daughter. First of all, make smoothies, put greens and reds powders in those smoothies. This is not about myself, but the bottom line is you could use Kingdom Fuel. I love that. You could get a vanilla Kingdom Fuel and put like a scoop of blueberries in there, maybe a little bit of goodness, cinnamon in there. It's whatever makes your daughter happy. If you mix that in there, you can actually bypass what she doesn't like and create a smoothie recipe that has greens in it. You get real creative. You can actually blend up some spinach and things in there. It's unnoticeable, and really it's so good. You can actually introduce that to a child very, very easily. Make sure you do that with even vitamins and minerals, even your omega-3 fatty acids. You can put those in liquid forms inside of that shake. That would be wisdom. I would give a shake every day. Sound like a great off-the-school meal. For your son, glad he eats well. That's good. That's awesome. Make sure he has those vitamins and minerals too. There is a pretty good internal supplement out there that I've used before. It's called Acnutrol. 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 I like that one pretty well from an internal standpoint. Now the dose on that's quite high at like 5 or 6 capsules. So I'm just letting you know that. If your son will swallow capsules, great. That's awesome. But you can also use some like retinol and things like that on the outer side. I also like GHK and BPC, those two peptides through Kingdom Skin. That does work really well to heal up the body. So keep that in mind. Sound like your son's in that little hormonal time, so there are the acne issues there. So keep it topical. Both of those things consider strongly, and also use the inner variety I talked about as well.
That is great advice. I've got one more for you today, and then I'm gonna ask you some political. I want to get your political analysis.
All right.
This is an anonymous listener in South Carolina. By the way, that last listener was in, I believe. Let me look back. I want to say, I don't want to get it wrong. She was in Kansas. This gal is in South Carolina, and she's really struggling. She was on Lexapro for over a year for depression that comes out as irritability. Lexapro actually improved this, but the side effects were too much. What can I take naturally to help me with this issue? All of my hormone labs are normal.
Well, a couple things, Anonymous in South Carolina, is this: keep in mind, when you get a report back that hormone labs are normal, that ought to spur a real quick red flag. What is normal? The ranges today are broad and they're undefined, and they come from this population of Americans that are very unhealthy. So you can't look at normal that means anything. So you probably want to get an opinion from a functional medicine person on that so they can be optimized. If they're not on the upper end of things, depression, mood issues, irritability, short fuse, etc., can be and sleep issues can be very, very common. As far as Lexapro goes, I'm glad you got off. That's awesome. Go with something called ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, very common supplement out there. I use some sitting right here on my desk. Really, you can see it. I'm not kidding about that. There it is, bio ashwagandha right there. I take it during the day if I'm having one of those days that I need to just have the edge off, man. And I'll take it. I don't mind. I also use this right here. This is called GABA, Pharma GABA. This is a chewable. I call it my personal chill pill, and so it works really good too. You can also go down the old-fashioned magnesium train, magnesium glycinate complex, 1 in the morning, 2 before bed's a good way to look at it. Make sure your vitamin D is up to speed. You need 5,000 IUs, and make sure your omega-3 is there. Depression, mood issues, are all of those things inclusive. Long answer to a short question, but all these areas must be addressed.
Yep, and I would second the ashwagandha. That's amazing. I mean, I have one that I take with black pepper supplement, and it really is. I mean, I have that. I don't take it every day, but I'll tell you what. Sometimes if you can feel it, if you feel the pressure coming on, I'm like, this is probably a good time to hit the ashwagandha. So, and and for somebody, I spent years on Lexapro, and I mean, the side effects are there. To me, for me, it wasn't worth it. And so, ashwagandha, I haven't seen or felt any side effects from that. Have you?
No, and you look at the studies, and I frankly haven't seen anything of a negative nature. I had one person that I put 1,200 milligrams on in the day, and that really did the trick to sort of calm down the edge. It helped with sleep. It helped with anxiety. So that's personal experience. I think it can be very, very readily used in various situations.
Yep, I agree. I could not agree more. All right. So, Dr. Mark, you're watching what's happening politically right now. If you were going to make a prediction, which I realize no one can do, but if you were going to make a prediction about who's going to win the presidential election, what do you say right now?
Well, I first of all believe that we were talking pre-show, and I think people need to keep in mind that the most powerful seats we have, the most powerful representation we have are the ones that represent the people. Our congressmen and senators, whether local or national. We need to really put a lot of effort into that. Don't lose track of that, and don't overstate the sort of imparted power of the presidency, because the president is a figurehead, yes, but what is it that holds that person and their power in check? That's going to be Congress. So it's really important to keep this in mind as we go, and not to neglect that particular presidential election, but to really not lose sight of what's going on in your local communities and in your own state. always get involved, always be knowledgeable, know where they stand, ask questions, and if they don't answer the questions, ask more or go next. Who else is running, right? That's one thing to keep in mind. As far as the presidential election goes, I think that I agree that it's kind of a toss-up situation at this point. I think that the thing that's going to end up being potentially the demise of the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris is the border crisis. I
Yep.
think there's been an ineptitude there that's been gross and horrible. The answers that don't answer the question are going to come back to bite that situation. Now, I'm not a strategist, but I would have hit her in the basement as long as I could have.
No kidding. She's a terrible candidate.
Yeah,
Every
you
time
got.
she opens her mouth, I mean, I actually love it when she does like,
Yeah,
interviews and such, because you're just like, oh, hey, you're worse than we thought you were.
yeah. It's interesting because Joe Biden didn't say anything, and she says the same with more words. So I think that's pretty funny.
And so,
And I
yeah,
would
it's true.
encourage too. Even on President Trump's side, I mean, he is who he is. I think we all understand there is things that are said that are not appropriate. I don't like them straight up. No, no big deal. That's turned people off, and I'm hopeful that as time goes on, that people will push really hard in the circle and say, it's about the people, and really not trade off insults because you don't need to. The
Right.
advice I would give to the Republican Party at this point: you stay on the issues, you stay on the economy, you stay on the border,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
stay
yeah.
on the people, and you will win. But
Yeah.
right now we've got this confusion in the messaging on both sides, I think, and that, in my mind, has made it a toss-up.
Did you happen to catch Bill Clinton, who looks like he's got one foot in the grave? I'm not gonna lie. It was shocking to see him, but you know that the Kamala Harris is hurting when she's pulling out. Barack Obama, who's scolding the black men for not voting for Kamala. And then I heard Bill Clinton they gave him a microphone, because I don't know why they did that, but they gave him a microphone and asked him about what he thought about, people have been killed by these criminal aliens coming across our wide open border. And he said, well, if they had been vetted, that wouldn't have happened. And you could hear the entire, Harris Walls campaign, like, power down.
Yep.
I mean, that's a pretty big gaffe, but he told the truth.
I appreciated that answer. I did see that, and when I
I don't
was
think he meant to do
watching,
that. I don't think he thought it through.
well, it was interesting because it was an honest answer. Anytime, it's like I use the analogy of the border of the mouth, the eyes, the ears, the heart, the mind.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you will stop and vet that and don't let something in that brings harm, it won't come inside and bring harm.
Right.
And the same is true with our borders, our physical borders. If we just stop and vet, I'm not against immigration. I'm actually for immigration, but I'm against indiscriminate entry into a
Yes.
country without vetting the person that are entering. That's just dumb. That's like a person sitting down at dinner and not even looking at the plate and allow people to feed them from anywhere. You could be
Yeah.
fed poison and nobody, I mean, we wouldn't do that. It is utter foolishness at this point.
Yeah, it is. And I think that Trump is doing the right thing by working with RFK, who's really trying to
Yeah.
bring, to the forefront the issues with our food supply, with big pharma and big ag and all that. And I think you're right. If they could just stay on message,
Yeah.
stay on message, because you don't need to convince somebody that the economy's on its head. All you got to do is go to the grocery store and tell us how much money you're spending on the same exact things that you bought 4 years ago. The Democrats are devastating for the economy. And in fact, I was talking to Jay about this the other night, right before Trump took over as the president. I remember going down a highway in my neck of the woods, and there were so many businesses that had gone out of business. These big for lease signs everywhere. And then Trump came in, and the economy, within pretty short order, was humming right along again, because he's a businessman. He understands how to make business work. And really, the United States is a giant business, right? And so, which is why we're upside down. You can't take in more than you have. You can't spend more than you have, which is what we've been doing. But now we're back to that again. You go down that same highway, businesses are boarded up, the for lease signs are up. It seems to me that that's just sort of the legacy of the Democrats.
Yeah, even go back to the beginning stages of COVID. That started a
Good
pattern
grief.
that sort of bled into this closing of mom and pop things. I
Yeah.
wish that we would. You mentioned something about the economy in a sense. I wish we would get the budget right. I'm
Yes.
very concerned about this long term, and nobody wants to see even both sides make promises about what they're going to give you.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I'm like, I don't want your money.
Yeah.
I want you to get rid of the debt because
Yeah.
from a country standpoint, and I feel this way, Heidi. I feel like the power of the purse, which is Congress, the House of Representatives. I don't think they ought to get paid one dime until they can balance the budget. I
Come
really
on.
don't. And I think the states should not be paying them taxes anymore because they're not being good stewards of that fund.
Mm-hmm.
And the states then are getting money from them that's based upon debt. So it's a system that's going to fail. And unless we get a hold of the real root causes of that, almost like the functional medicine model,
Yeah.
um, we're not going to survive very
Mm-hmm.
long. And I appreciate what President Trump does to your point, being a business guy. He understands things. He understands that the art of negotiation is
Mm-hmm.
not a fun business, but it has to be done, and it's not all diplomatic. Sometimes it's looking somebody in the face, mano a mano, and saying, "Look, dude, if you do that, I'm going to send the troops in and deal with this." And he was so unpredictable, is so unpredictable. He sort of puts shutters of fears in some of these other world dictators that they won't do dumb things like that. And
So
he did
true.
bring jobs back to our country. The sense of American pride in manufacturing once again. That's got to get back.
Yeah, I agree. And I know, remember one of the very first things that Joe Biden did when he took over in the White House was he cut out the Keystone Pipeline,
Yeah.
put an end to all this stuff. And so America, we were energy independent, and he basically made us dependent again on foreign oil.
Yeah.
It's astonishing to me how anyone could vote, given what's happening in our country and seeing what's going on with our southern border, watching inflation, the jobs numbers, all of it. I mean, you could take the abortion issue out. You could take the transgender issue out. The Democrats are the party that stands for eradicating women from their own sports leagues because they're going to infiltrate them with men. These are the people that believe apparently that men belong in safe spaces. That women, up until 5 minutes ago, Mark, we all believe the same thing. You know what a woman is, right?
Yeah, I've learned that over time. I remember learning that back in puberty days. That thing. But honestly, it's like something is amiss if we
100%.
can't think our way through this stuff, And it's not about a party at this point; it's about the people, for Pete's sake. And
Yes.
we've got to get back to that point where we're starting to value people once again. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. And by the way, on resources, I'll just say this real quick. The idea of resources, they're not scarce, people. We
Yep.
live in a world that was created by a God that gave us abundance for his people to not just survive on the earth, but to thrive. We've got to be creative enough and ask him for the information and wisdom enough to discover those resources.
It's good.
We need to be energy independent in this country.
Yep. And we can be.
Yes.
And we can be. I mean, that really is the point that you're making. I've had another question for you. Would you run again? Would you run for office again?
I got asked that this week, actually. It's interesting you'd ask. Here's my concern with it. I appreciate what RFK did from an independent standpoint.
Yes.
I do think that the party system is broken. I
Yeah.
really, really do. There's too much infighting and too much general overall monetary power on both sides.
Yeah.
Both have become more about a party than they have about people. If I ran again, I would consider running as an independent.
Okay.
And this is why. I just want to make sure it's not necessarily to win an election, although it's possible if you get in a race, but it would be to create the power of influence from the people. Just like RFK, he had quite a little following on him for a while there. And
Yes.
so his ability to stand up, stand out, and sort of create a gap between the two, a bridge, was pretty good. And so that's kind of where I feel in my heart. I don't know. I get asked that quite a bit. I guess if the Lord says yes, I don't guess, I will.
Yeah, that's exactly my answer too. When people say, "Would you run again?" I'm like, "Well, If the Lord asked me to, I would do it. And I think we need more Christians in politics. We've got to see more of God's people engaging, and it's really important. Here in Washington State, ballots have already dropped, so people can start voting and returning their ballots. And this is going to be a very, very important election. And I know most of the people that listen to this show, they're going to vote. What would you say to somebody who says, I'm not going to vote, it doesn't matter?
To not vote is the most un-American thing you can do. To not vote is to not accept the greatest American gift you have, which is your choice. Voting is what the people that died and fought in wars gave us the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
We need to vote. Everyone votes counts. Whether you win or lose the election, that's not the point. The point is, did you and did I look in the mirror and say, I did my part?
Yes.
I really did my part. I did all I could do. So I would say one thing, vote.
Yeah, I agree. Could not agree more. Dr. Mark Sherwood, you are a national treasure. If people want to find out about you, they can go to sherwood.tv/Heidi. And I'm going to see, my friend, if I can get a special link for that face cream. I have had so many people messaging me about that. So I'd like to get that from you. Maybe we'll stick that in the show notes today as well. And I just appreciate so much your heart for people. I know that you and I both really enjoy answering these questions, and we want you guys to keep them coming, don't we?
Keep them coming. It's really an awesome experience to see all these questions come in from all over the country. It's fascinating. So we love you all so much. Just thank you for trusting us with the ability to just get your questions out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're really busy, and I really appreciate you coming on and just blessing the listeners of the Heidi St. John podcast. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
If you guys want more information on Dr. Mark Sherwood, you can go to HeidiSt.John.com/podcast. Please keep sending us your questions. We love interfacing with you. And again, that's HeidiSt.John.com/mailbox Monday. And to find out more about Dr. Mark Sherwood and his beautiful wife, Michelle, you can go to the Functional Medicine Institute, right? Are you guys in Tulsa? I keep forgetting where you're at. Oklahoma. The song keeps coming to my head, and you guys can check it out. They've been a great help to my family. I can personally vouch for them, and I know they'll be a blessing to yours as well. And you connect with them by going to sherwood.tv/Heidi. We love you guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.